Writing project, you know what a tremendous opportunity for professional development it is. If you haven't done so, it's a great way to not only get credit hours for your degree, but then also to just gain a wealth of resources. And then it's not a new, but it's a really great philosophy of teaching. It really helped me think more of being a facilitator than just a lecture type teacher. So the National Writing Project is kind of the foundation for who I am as a workshop teacher in my classroom. I also work with Scholastic as part of their top teaching team, so I'm in New York a lot working with their team. But today, I really want to focus, the afternoon session that I do will be on literacy, if you're interested in that one. But today it's going to be about classroom design and really thinking about, no matter if you're at the elementary level or all the way through the secondary level, just thinking about designing the perfect learning environment for your students. So when I think about kind of what to put in my classroom, how to do the arrangement, I really have to think about designing for, and it's really about the students. And I often tell the kids, it's not my classroom, it's our classroom. So it looks different every year. Every single year my classroom changes. And I ask the kids, well, what do you want your classroom to look like? And it was interesting because on Wednesday, yesterday, I was sitting with them and a couple of the girls had an idea. And I said, well, we'll talk about that on Monday. So they keep me on my toes, but the classroom they know is theirs. So thinking about colors, and this was kind of where I started, and my Jacob, who is 6 now, is really a boy. I mean, when I say he is a boy, I try to get him into playing more with girl things, and he's just complete Minecraft. He's obsessed. He is everything green and blue, and he won't even go into the store Justice with Riley, my daughter, to go, it's too girly, Mom, I'm not going in there. So thinking about him and a student in his classroom, I'm fortunate that he doesn't have a classroom that's covered in pink polka dots and chevron print. It really is kind of gender neutral this year, so I'm fortunate for that. But I have a lot of friends who have beautiful classrooms, but they're really designed for girls. And when I think about what our spaces should be, you know, they're not for us. We see a lot of ideas on Pinterest that really look great, but really thinking about the kids and thinking about making it comfortable for everyone. And less is more, and that's a big message that I'll share today. And really just making sure that, you know, no matter if you have boys in your room or girls in your room, that their space is reflective of who they are as children. So having flexible seating is also very important. And when I asked my children, this was 2.5 years ago, I asked the kids, I said, if you could design your classroom any way that you want, what is one thing that you want to make sure that we have? And it was remarkable to hear them say that they just wanted to get rid of the chairs and the desks. So for me, that's kind of where I started with ditching the desks. And I've written a couple articles on that. So if you Google ditching the desks, you'll find that. And they really wanted a space to where they could work in small group or independent or in partnerships. So I really wanted to make sure that I highlighted that in their classroom. So the key for designing for me in my classroom space for the kids was really providing a balance for them and having just a variety of different options for if they needed to work on a project by themselves, that they had a space where they could do that. If they needed to work collaboratively, they could do that as well. And mind you, my classroom is very small, so I didn't have a lot of opportunities to rearrange furniture and do all of that, but I knew I had to redesign the space because my kids needed it. So our students are changing. You guys know, if you have more than 20 kids in your class, will you raise your hand? And look around. Our class sizes are increasing. We have so many students with just a variety of needs in our classrooms. So when we think about differentiation and personalized learning, there's a lot on our plates that we are expected to do in the classrooms on a daily basis. So it's hard, it's very difficult. And oftentimes I feel like this, the next clip. Maybe. Oh, and it's not playing, and it was a really good one. I don't know why it's not. Give me just a second, because it's not advancing to the next slide either. I apologize for that. so I just went to the next one. So it was a really funny clip, I promise. So, no, that's okay. I apologize. I don't know why it's not playing. I'll tweet it out later, though. It's really funny. It's just really going to show the need for differentiation in our classroom and why it's imperative that we do that. Because I'm a second grade teacher this year. I've taught middle school as well. But in my second grade classroom, when I meet my students, of course, we do a variety of assessments in the beginning of the year. And you guys know that you have kids no matter what grade level you teach. There are some who are 2 or 3 or 4 grade levels behind where they should be. And then you have some who are 2, 3, and 4 grade levels above where they should be. And then of course you have those who are at grade level. So it's really difficult to be one person in a classroom when you have so many kids to really think about how do you personalize learning for all students. And for me, it was really thinking about the space, because my room is small, like I said, and whenever I wanted to pull a small group of kids, there wasn't an opportunity to do that. I couldn't say, okay, you 5 come over here and you 2 go work over there. So I really had to think about my space, number one, but then thinking about what I had to do to kind of prepare these kids for their future. There's a huge initiative right now, an effort going on at the national level. It's called Future Ready. So it's a great hashtag to follow if you're on Twitter, the Future Ready hashtag. But it's really thinking about getting kids prepared for their future. And we know that, you know, our kids are not getting ready for assembly line type work. They're really getting in line for collaborative opportunities. They need to know how to problem solve, and especially if you're at the elementary, well, I'm sure at the secondary level too, it's really eye-opening to kind of see the way that some children struggle with just the basic communication tools that they need. And it's really sad to think that some of our kids don't have these basic problem-solving needs that they should have. So when we think about what was really popular back in 1915, and then take it 100 years later and think about 2015, kind of where we are and what's changed in our world, it was a big deal with the telephone service, you know, it was a big deal with things such as the horseless carriage. I mean, things were so different. Now we have 3D printing, we have so many exciting things, but yet our classrooms aren't truly reflective of the shift that we've made in our world. So some schools are catching on, and they're doing a fantastic job of that. Some schools are really thinking about just innovative spaces and changing not just the classrooms, but really kind of breaking walls and restructuring their environments entirely. So my classroom, the way that I did it, of course I couldn't break down walls. I wish that I could, but it's really thinking about what I could do. And oftentimes teachers say, well, I don't have money. We don't have that in our budget. So how did you make that happen? So for me, I did apply for a grant within my school, because oftentimes teachers say, well, how did you get even just the small amounts of change that you put into your room? So Steelcase is also having a grant right now, and it goes through the end of February. So you could apply for that, and they're going to outfit your entire classroom with their furniture and interactive whiteboards, a nice blend of analog technology as well. So, and I don't know if this will play, I'm hoping. And then there's not sound, but it's playing. And my sound is plugged in, so I'm sorry.
I said it, violence and NBC.
Yeah. I'm going to rewind that so you guys can see it. And if you watch the Super Bowl, it was one of the commercials that was on, and I was so sad. I was like, wait, now the world's going to see it, and I love that. But it's a slide that I've shared for a number of years.
Back down 56 pass, I wasn't prepared to translate that as I was doing that little tease.
Oh,
that
that's
little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Kay said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard it.
Around.
I'd never heard it said. I'd always seen the
Right.
mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence and NBC.
Yeah, I heard the around or about in the lunchroom.
See, there it is. Violence at NBC, GE.com. I mean,
Well, what Allison should know,
what
when you
is
say that,
internet
Allison,
anyway?
Internet is that massive computer
Right.
network, the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in this studio shortly.
What is it?
the name?
It's a giant computer network made up of, started from,
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like
You
a
looked at the
computer
dictionary.
billboard.
it's not a, it's a computer billboard, but it's
Right.
nationwide. It's several universities and everything all joined together.
Right.
And others can access it.
Right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
It
Just
came
great.
in really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie and other
But you don't need that. You don't need a phone line to operate the internet. No, apparently
I
not.
was telling Katie.
So that's definitely one of my. Thinking about how much has changed, that was 1994, and I know that all of you can think about where you were in 1994 and think about how our world has changed. And if you were in the classroom in 1994 teaching, or if you were just even in school in your undergrad studies or anywhere that you were, think about how similar our education system is to the way that it was in 1994. So much has changed. It's not only our pedagogy, but also the way that our classroom is structured, thinking about that.
We live in a world fueled by technology and invention. We are shaped by what we learn, touch, and see. We start with dreams.
I want to be a pro volleyball player.
I was fashion designer, a doctor,
Designing machines.
I want to be a teacher and a nurse.
That, when given the proper tools, manifest themselves in the real world through skill building and creativity.
Robotics is a very interesting field because it combines engineering and programming, and both of those skills can be very useful in life because our society as a whole is moving towards a more technology. Programming teaches you a lot about creativity, ingenuity, and problem solving. You have to be able to think outside the box in order to solve the problems that arise when you're programming something.
My name is Chris Johnson and I teach photography. I'm lucky enough to have a small amount of DSLR cameras for this class. We also have some limited software for our computers. We have a great studio that has great lighting. The students are able to create things that would not be possible with paper and pencil. So technology has really provided a great venue of creativity for our students at Sacraside.
From seeing at a microscopic level the cells and DNA that make up life itself, to seeing some of the greatest monuments that make up the world we live in at the click of a button. Knowledge, ideas, and creations of all languages are able to be instantly shared in this vast interconnected web of information we like to call the internet. So maybe one day we could create something just as revolutionary. But through this new eye, we also see poverty, corruption, and struggle. Wounds in which we must mend as global citizens of this world. Technology does not only shape the way we see this world, it shapes the way we see people. We see the beauty that exists in everyone, equally. Let the classroom be our drawing board, and social media our stage. Ask your school how they will use technology to lead education to the future. My name is Kayla Bria, and this is our time to become the thinkers, builders, and creators of our generation. We are the 21st century. And as always, stay curious.
So I love that video because it was actually created by a student, but it really goes to show our kids love when they can do things, and really thinking about creating a space where they can be those doers and they're creators of content. And with me, it started with giving them the opportunity and the space to do that. So there is a lot of research grounded in the types of practices that I'll get into today. For example, Susan Kovalik has done a number of studies on even from the color to classroom layout to even the classroom jobs that you have for your students, and really just making it an authentic environment for your students. And when I think about the brain research that goes into it, we had consultants come from Hope College to the school where I used to teach at about 6 years ago. I taught first grade. And we had a lady named Linda Jordan. She came into our classrooms, and you didn't have to have her come if you didn't want to, but it was my first year teaching. And I said, well, how can I pass up an opportunity to have someone come into my classroom and evaluate it and give me feedback so that I can make it better for my kids? So she came into my room, and I had never met this lady before. And the first thing she said is like, whoa. She's like, Erin, what were you thinking when you put that up there? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, she's not very nice. But she was giving me really good feedback. So we had just this basic conversation. And one of the things that really came out of it for me was thinking about classroom space in the eyes of the 6-year-olds that were in there every day. And she said, you know, I noticed that you have the number line up along the top of the classroom. She goes, why is that? And my answer was simple. Well, our district says that we have to have the everyday math number line in our classroom, so that's where it is. It was here when I moved in. I haven't changed it. Some pieces of tape kind of made it fall off, so I repaired that, but I have no idea what you're talking about. She said, well, if you're 6 and you need to use that, right, for math? Like, that's the purpose? And I said, well, sure. And she said, tell me how a 6-year-old can use that. So when they use it as a reference, they look. And she said, go sit in one of those chairs and look up at it. So I did. And it's like sitting in the movie theater in the front row. It's not very comfortable. So I'm sitting with my head up, trying to look at the number line. And she said, now actually try and do like your bunny hops or counting and adding. She's like, wouldn't it make more sense just to bring it down to the children's eye level? And it made perfect sense just to lower it. So a lot of those very simplistic changes, thinking about a student-centered classroom. Then she also said, and I noticed, Erin, that it's laminated. She said, why did you do that? And I said, well, I didn't do it. It was like that when I came here, but obviously it'll last longer, right? And she said, can you see it with the glare on it? Absolutely not. So even thinking about like not laminating things in your classroom and really thinking about how the students see the information. And what I realized is it's not just classroom design, but it's really making our students responsible citizens. And it's really so much more than just where you put your furniture or how it looks. It's really getting them to be more responsible and making sure that if they have a resource that it's available for them. Carnegie Mellon has done a tremendous amount of research as well in relation to attention and allocation for environmental print that's around the room. And I have a picture of my classroom that you'll see a few slides up. I used to have anchor charts everywhere, especially being like a reading and writing workshop teacher. Everything that we did, we would chart it out and I would put it on the walls, and it really became like permanent wallpaper in my classroom. After I read some of the research and some of the studies on how it's really distracting to those students, and we saw the statistic from the CDC, 11% of our kids are coming to us with special needs, and that's just for ADHD, and that was in 2011. So we know that the statistics are even higher now, and really thinking about how they can focus in the classroom when there is so much up on the walls. So thinking about a classroom that really looks like the teacher's store, kind of exploded, versus a classroom that is very minimalistic. When I speak to my grandmother, she says, Erin, she's like, I saw the picture that you put on Facebook of your classroom, and she's like, don't you teach the little kids? I was like, well, they're 2nd grade, they're not little, but sure. She said, don't they need like red and they need to be stimulated? She's like, your room just doesn't look very fun. My grandmother is very honest. And I said, no, it's fun, like we have a good time. So I started explaining to her my rationale behind really having a minimalistic environment. And she still doesn't get it. She still thinks that I should have everything bouncy, bright, and everything. And she said, well, you know, the research on babies, like the little mobiles that they put in the crib, she's like, Erin, they really need to be stimulated with like reds. She's like, that'll get their heart going. And I'm like, that'll also make them crazy in the classroom. So what you put on display truly matters. And it is a different mindset than what we used to think about. How you arrange your classroom matters and the layout. So when I decided to ditch the desks, that's kind of where I started with my journey for designing the space, because that's where the kids wanted. They wanted more flexible seating and a more comfortable environment. So that's where I started. But then I really wanted to, the more I researched, the more I wanted to change. And I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I also switched schools. I taught 1st grade, and then I taught middle school, grades 6 and 7. I was an instructional technology coach. I also did literacy support. And finally I realized that my heart was truly back in the classroom. So I switched schools, went back into the elementary, and just every year, and you guys know this, there's new initiatives, there's new curriculum, and I was feeling slightly overwhelmed, kind of like this. So what does good design look like? I knew that I was used to reading and writing workshop. It was new for the district that I moved to. So we had everyday math that we had to teach. We had Rebecca Sitton for spelling. We had handwriting without tears. We had a reading curriculum from Oakland County. We had a writing curriculum. We had to do guided reading. We had Zahner Blozer or something. We had something for everything. And everything kept getting put on our plate, but yet nothing was being taken off. And then we were expected to do all of these differentiation and just meet the needs of the kids. But yet we weren't really receiving any resources to do that. And it wasn't that the district was trying to be unfair. It was just they didn't really know how to do it. So I started researching. I found some very unique spaces. I found I heard Sir Ken Robinson 2 years ago at ASCD and he talked about the Blue Man Group and how they started a school, and just thinking about creating a more play-based environment for kids, and that really resonated with me, and I said, that's exactly what I need to do. I need to think of creative ways to really inspire the kids that are in my classroom, because if they're inspired, then they're going to be more open and receptive and available to the learning of the content that I'm teaching. So I started connecting with different people across my own state. This is Ben Gilpin's school. He's on Twitter as well, great resource. He's an administrator in the Spring Arbor Jackson area. And he allowed his teachers to come in during the summer, and he supplied them with a small budget, but he allowed them to really create their spaces. This is all of Ben's school, in any way that they wanted to. And the teachers got a lot of feedback from their students and what they wanted for their own classrooms. And it was really, really interesting to find that they all wanted very similar things. They all wanted places where they felt comfortable and places where they could talk to one another. So you can see that teachers brought in couches, they brought in just different seating arrangements. This is another classroom, a little bit more of a budget. These are the steel case node chairs that you can put supplies underneath, rotate. This is a friend of mine's classroom. She also ditched the desks. She is a third grade teacher in Michigan. She has 28 kids in her classroom, and she got rid of all of her desks and she brought in tables. And she said that it's really easy whenever they want to collaborate, because she can just move one table out of the way rather than having to move 6 or 7 desks. So it just opens up that floor space for her kids. And she still has her guided reading area. These are just all pictures of Mary's classroom. And I love how she brings in a lot of nature, and Susan Kowalek's research talks about that too, just making it a very kind of homey environment for the children, just really comfortable, kind of that Barnes & Noble, Starbucks type feel. And a lot of teachers will say, well, where do you put your stuff? And this is a big question that I get. So Mary has all of her items placed in drawers that are still accessible for the children to go and get whenever they need, but it's also not distracting. Because we know children, they always have fidgets in their hand, they're always playing with something, whether it's pattern block templates, erasers, paper clips, anything they can get their hands on. And sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes it can be a distractor. So just having everything available to them at their reach, but then also tucked away so that it's not distracting. She also has her little maker space in the back, which I love. She has in her cabinet Legos and makey-makey, all kinds of things that the kids' gadgets can play with, but then it can be tucked away out of sight so that it's not a distractor. If you do Daily 5 or Cafe, this is one of the teachers' classrooms, just creating a nice nook in the back. And all of these pictures that I'm showing you are from video clips that are showcased on a website called classroomcribs.com, and it's kind of like the MTV Cribs. So it's a site that I started with 3 friends of mine, AJ Giuliani, Ben Gilpin, and so what we did is we wanted to really just showcase actual classrooms, not model schools or anything like that, but real classrooms by real teachers who have made small changes. Even like Martha, she just brought in a picnic table for kids. She wanted a place where a bunch of them can sit together and collaborate. Deb, I love, she teaches at the secondary level, and she said, you know, I started looking at classroom cribs, and one of the things I noticed is the seating. She said, so I had these 2 chairs in my basement, and I brought them into the school. She said, I didn't even know where to put them, and they wouldn't fit my classroom, so I stuck them out in the middle of the hallway. And she said, second period of the day, the kids were just sitting in it and really just doing their work. And she's like, and these are some of the kids who really weren't engaged in collaborating before. And she said, it was really kind of weird. She's like, who would have thought just adding 2 chairs in the middle of the hallway would have allowed for this? So this picture just illustrates high school students. It really not is just for elementary, but it's all levels. Just creating opportunities for students to be able to connect and collaborate. They will start to do that on their own. And this was something that I tried to, I don't want to say force, but this was something that I tried to make naturally happen in my classroom by rearranging the desks and by giving them partnerships and by incorporating Kagan structures and cooperative learning, but yet none of it was truly working the way that I wanted it to until I started to make the shifts in the arrangement of the classroom to make it very natural for the students. So library and media spaces have been redone. Everything from painting, just bringing the colors to a very monochromatic color scheme or more neutral, and just adding plants and floor space for elementary kids. When teachers ask about budget or how I do things, and I tell them it was really easy my first year of teaching because at the new school where I was, because the kids, when I asked them what they wanted for seating, they said, we don't want anything, we just like to lay on the floor. And I was like, well, that's definitely affordable, so we can do that. And my administrator liked that too. He's like, so that's all you need is just to get rid of the desks? You don't need anything else? And I said, nope, that's it. So it was a really easy change that was very affordable. It's just to open up the floor space for the kids. And this was my middle school classroom when I taught grades 6 and 7. And I had a reading area set up, and this was very unlike middle schools in my building. And it was interesting because the kids were never tardy for my class. They were always like rushing in because they always wanted to get the good seat in the reading area. So it was definitely an added bonus that I didn't anticipate. And this is another teacher's classroom, just bringing in different seating arrangements, just different ideas. I love just all of the different tables. They don't have to match or be perfect, just giving kids the opportunity to be able to feel comfortable and to collaborate with one another. And this one I love because I never even thought about just painting a space of the wall or even covering it with a fabric, but to make a green screen space in your classroom. So just fantastic ideas. This is one from an elementary teacher who does a lot of centers and rotating stations. A reading center set up on the floor for the kids to gather. She has a vocabulary center in her space. And I asked her, I said, is this really a classroom? Because this one did not look like a classroom space to me. She said, nope, it absolutely is. And I said, how incredible would that be just to be a child, like this is my classroom, walking in the first day, or even knowing like when you reach the next grade level that that classroom could be an opportunity for you to be in. It just seems so appealing to me. When we raised a lot of money last year to redesign our multimedia space at our school, because what we had was very much, like I'm sure many of you in your multimedia spaces or computer labs, just desks facing the wall. And the kids, when you were in there teaching or the kids were working, they all had their big headphones on, and then they were facing a wall at the computer. And the teacher would often be in the center of the room or in the front of the room, and the kids back of their heads. And I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. And the more I talked to the administrative team, they said, you're absolutely right. And they said, so what should we do? And I was like, well, we need to make it more, like, where do we work? Where do you go when you need to collaborate or connect or do anything? And it's Panera, it's Barnes & Noble, it's Starbucks, it's somebody's house. So I said, that's the type of environment that we need to create for kids. So we started researching just different furniture options, different layouts, and this is what we came up with. And the kids love it. And it did cost a little bit, obviously, to get the furniture and stuff, but the tremendous difference that it has made for the kids to really take ownership of their own learning has just been remarkable. This is another teacher in Ben Gilpin's, and she has just tons of different seating for her kids because we know kids are different. So she has the yoga ball, she has the little stool, she does have some traditional chairs, and then she also has some chairs that allow for a little bit of movement as well. And then of course, floor space. So these are all available, like I said, on Classroom Cribs for you to kind of go in and see their videos, no more than 4 minutes long. So you can just go in and see a variety of different clips, and the teacher kind of talking about how she set up the classroom or how he arranged it the way in which they did. So School Supply Addict is another resource that has a lot of different classrooms. You will find a lot of Pinteresty type classrooms on this site, but some of the layouts and design will give you some ideas for maybe how to rearrange your classroom library or rearrange certain seating arrangements for the children, and that's just a really good resource as well. So we know that it's a new time for kids. We know that they are not, should not be in desks and rows, and we really need to start embracing that for our students. And I love this video put out by Apple. It really just goes to show how seamless technology is in our world.
I'm living the life of dreams. I'm feeling hopefully, feeling quite hopefully. Good people all around me. I'm feeling hopefully, and the light shines bright all through the night. And our dreams are making us nice stories. And my loves are well, sleeping just right. And I know now that we're living a life of dreams. Dreams.
Down here. It's just Mr. Elephant. Come on, let's get to bed.
So I love that. I was without my phone for about 9 hours. It broke when I was transitioning from, I had the old 4 to the new 6. Just those 9 hours that I was without my phone, I felt so disconnected. And I know that we shouldn't be that dependent on technology, but it was my email, it was my form of contact, it was my communication with the world, even to take pictures. So kids don't think twice about technology. It's really just part of their world. And thinking about ways that we can meaningfully embed that within our classroom. So not only did I want to design a space that was very student-centered, I also knew that I wanted to bring in different technologies to the classroom. I didn't have much. I actually used to do a presentation just, I only have one iPad. How do you maximize the resources and differentiate instruction by having minimal technology? So what I found was, this is just a case by Max Cases. I love it. My children used to say, and if you teach elementary, you know this, probably secondary too, like, I want to hold the iPad. No, it's my turn. And then they argue, and it's like, I just have one, guys. Like, we set up routines and procedures all year long about sharing and cooperation, but then yet you bring something that you only have one of, and it really creates just the struggle in the classroom. But when I put this iPad on the case, on the stand, it was interesting because students would just start to gravitate towards it, and no longer did they care about who was holding it. It was more of just them touching back and forth and talking with one another, and then I could have 4 or 5 people using just the one device. So it was really great. And the breakfast nook was something that I added in my classroom. I have this half wall space, and I used to have my anchor chart paper there with a bunch of supply baskets in the back, and it took a lot of floor space. And then I realized that I needed to maximize seating for my kids, but then I also needed to do something different when I got rid of the desks. So because I had this half wall, I was getting a breakfast nook for my house, and that's kind of what triggered the idea. And I said, that would be perfect in my classroom. So it's not as sturdy as some of the typical classroom furniture that we have. My 4th year having it, and it's still in perfect condition. And the children actually treat this type of furniture a lot more respectfully than they do some of the others. And when I asked the kids, I said, you guys are so good with this, you're so responsible. One of the little boys told me one time, and he said, well, it just looks really nice. It's like when mom takes you to a really nice restaurant, you just act better than like you do at McDonald's. And I was like, it makes sense. So I do bring in a lot of items from my basement or from my home, and it really just allows the kids to be more independent learners. It allows them to collaborate more. They're so used to just touching and manipulating and connecting that when I really ditched the desks and kind of stepped out of the way, I saw more active engagement happening in my room, and the children really just gravitating towards one another to collaborate rather than me trying to kind of force that or turn and talk, eye to eye, knee to knee, boys and girls. Okay, partners, ones share with twos, twos share with ones. All of this that I used to have structured didn't need to happen anymore because children were just naturally doing it, which was fantastic. So how I began this was really thinking about my space. This is a good friend of mine who's actually here speaking at the conference, Nicholas Provenzano, and he did this at the secondary level for his language arts class. So I love showing this because he started to think intentionally about his design space and what was being utilized versus what wasn't. And he really just started thinking, okay, I need learning hubs. And I like that idea because at the secondary level, you don't want to say centers or stations, but learning hubs made a lot of sense to me, and I thought that was a great idea for the older kids. So you can see he's like, okay, getting rid of all the desks. Like, this is not working. This is not a collaborative environment. So I love his process and his thinking. So that's exactly what I did. I had a goal in mind when I really thought to redesign my entire classroom space. I said, okay, what is it that I need to do? Because there is so much that you can do for kids and the change and the research that goes into it. Number one, I would say just make it a very minimalistic environment because less truly is more and to not be distracting. But for me, my number one goal was just to get rid of the desks because that's what the kids wanted. So I listened to the students that I taught because this was their space. And so I got rid of all the desks, and then I started to panic because I took everything out of my room, and this was days before school started because I was the summer at a lot of different conferences, family vacation. So I decided to take this project on literally days before school started, and I was in a panic. And you'll see this was day 2. This was day 3. It started to get a little bit better, but still it was a big task, a huge undertaking, because I realized if I wasn't using something within the past 6 months or the past year, chances are I wasn't going to use it. So I just needed it out of my classroom, and I needed more space for students' items, students' artifacts, students' work, students' resources and materials. So I ended up working, gosh, probably like 16-hour days sometimes in my classroom. We made it a family affair. We put Wizard of Oz up for the kids. They brought in sleeping bags. We didn't sleep there, almost though. But we had everything, just different assembling, lots of furniture from IKEA I think my husband was about to kill me. He put everything together, which was great. But finally, there was progress that started, and you can kind of see it starting to take shape. And what happened was a really, I don't want to say empty, but a really basic classroom with just lots of opportunities for kids. And that's really what I wanted for my classroom space, because it wasn't my classroom, it was theirs. And I wanted everything to be collaborative for them. I wanted them to have resources that they could get. And being a workshop teacher, a reading and writing workshop, it's really important when I'm conferencing with kids that I'm not bothered, because we do differentiate instruction a lot, and I say I'm not teaching writing, I'm not teaching reading, I'm teaching the writer, or I'm teaching the reader. So because I personalize instruction for all of my students, and when I'm conferencing with a small group or an individual, I need for my kids to be able to be problem solvers and independent on their own. So if they need a sticky note, if they need to staple something, they need to have access to all of those materials so that they can get them whenever they need, Band-Aids, anything. So they do have baskets everywhere around the room with extra supplies, and they know where all of that is. I don't like a lot to be at the tables. People often say, well, if you don't have desks, where do they put all of their belongings? We have everything on shelves in the room. And my kids actually apply for jobs at the beginning of the year. If you're an elementary teacher, you probably have some sort of class job structure in your room. And what I learned from Susan Kowalik is really just creating authentic jobs within the classroom. So I don't have jobs that rotate every week. I wait until about the second or third week of school when our classroom starts to get a little bit messy and things just start to get lost and misplaced. And the kids, you can tell, they start to get a little bit fired up and they get a little bit bothered by it. And then I say, so what should we do about it? Well, somebody needs to sharpen these pencils. Well, somebody should do that. Somebody is you. So we really need to kind of figure out, what is it that you guys can do? And they said, well, we don't have classroom jobs. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So should we have jobs? And they're like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I said, well, write it down. Why do you want the job? What are you going to do? And it was so funny, when I gave them this autonomy, I had one of the little girls who desperately wanted to be a pencil sharpener, and she thought she would be the world's best pencil sharpener. And I call it just a dimensions of performance, so the kids have to outline just everything that they're going to do and why they should have this job. So essentially, they're applying for it. And she wrote that not only would she sharpen the pencils, but because safety is a core value at our school, she was also going to put them tipped down so that the point wouldn't be sharpened and up. And just, she really thought about it, everything. And I said, you're hired. So then the kids say, well, what, are we going to switch jobs like every week? And I said, do I switch jobs every week? And they're like, no. And I said, so no, you're going to get really good at your job, and you're going to have it all year long. And if you want to add another job to it, sure, just let me know. If for some reason you do want to change jobs, and I've never had a child want to do this, but then of course I would let them. They would have to turn in like a 2-week notice. They'd have to talk to me about what's not working. So we really kind of make it authentic, and I make them think about it. And my supply captains, the reason I bring this up, because you can see some of our materials like the journals and everything on the back shelf. Griffin and Sarah are my supply captains this year, and it's so nice because it's almost March now, and they know as soon as we're transitioning into math, I don't even have to say anything. They're at the back getting the math journals out, passing them out. So they really take charge and ownership, and they're super quick about it too. And all of our table 1 stuff is on this side, all of our table 2 is on that side, so they really just become organized and efficient. It doesn't take long at all. It's quicker, in my opinion, than having every single student get out the materials from their own desk. It really just works. This is an example of a bad classroom, and it's my classroom, but I share it because this is when I had that permanent wallpaper up all year long. And we, like I said, we anchor charted everything. But now what I do, because especially after I researched that Carnegie Mellon and the attention to allocation and the focus of children and where it should be, and I started just taking pictures of the anchor charts whenever we were done, and I knew that the kids still need it as a resource. So then I would just open up PowerPoint and copy the image a bunch, print it off, and then have the kids cut out the little anchor charts and put it inside their reader's notebook or put it inside their writer's notebook. So they could still have the anchor chart, but now it wasn't up all year long. And what I found was, when I did have information displayed all year long, the kids got so used to just seeing it that they weren't using it anyway, because it literally became like permanent wallpaper. It wasn't new and exciting, and it wasn't information that they were attracted to look at, and it wasn't catching their attention, so they weren't utilizing it anyway. So this really worked a lot better. Before I decided to ditch the desks, this is a picture of my classroom space, And teachers often say, well, wow, it looks really kind of big. It's not, I promise. I guess I'm good at angles and taking pictures, but it really is tight and small. And you can see in the back there, it really is close to the heat register, and I couldn't get back there to my kids. So I always had to sit my high kids back there. I'm like, you guys are good. Like, you don't need me. You know who's in the front row in your classrooms. And I had all my little cherubs right there in the front that I could get to easily who always needed me. But it still wasn't working, and I wanted to get to all of my kids, and it wasn't fair to just the high kids to always be in the back and never really get my attention. So that's when I truly decided to just get rid of the desks and make everyone equal in the classroom and think about just designing. I got rid of my desk as well. What I realized was it was just a hub for holding my computer, my printer, and all of those. So I got rid of that and just put all of my stuff on a table. People often say to me, what about the management piece? Like, how do you handle that? Because you're giving children so much autonomy, and especially at the elementary level, don't they take advantage of that, or aren't they more disruptive? Or, you know, if you put them at desks, you can kind of divide and conquer, and you're over there and you're over there, but once you kind of put them in these collaborative groups, aren't they very talkative? And do you have like some sort of economic system or some sort of like rewards, a marble jar, or anything in your classroom? Like, how do you keep kids focused and get them to pay attention? So I say, no, I actually don't do any of that. It's just a very authentic environment, and this is why.
Listen up. Come to the center of the room, please. This is a Schrute buck. When you have done something good, you will receive 1 Schrute buck. $1,000 Schrute bucks equals an extra 5 minutes for lunch.
What is the cash value of a Schrute buck?
Excellent question, Pam. 1/100th.
So 10,000 of your dollars is worth 1 real dollar?
Just zip your lid. Good. Now, let us discuss precipitation. Stanley, when rainfall occurs, does it usually fall in a liquid, solid, or gaseous state?
Liquid.
Very good. You have earned 1 Schrute buck.
I don't want it.
Then you have been deducted 50 Schrute bucks.
Make it 100.
Don't you want to earn Schrute bucks?
No. In fact, I'll give you 1 billion Stanley Nickels if you never talk to me again.
What's the ratio of Stanley Nickels to Schrute bucks?
The same as the ratio of unicorns to leprechauns.
Okay.
That's it. Class is canceled. Everybody out.
No, wait. What are you doing?
I'm punishing them.
No. Class is not canceled.
So that, I saw that a couple years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. What I used to have is a classroom economy system. I actually called it Frog Mart, and my kids would earn like Klein dollars, and I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, and it made perfect sense. Everything that I was doing and I was researching, I was actually doing the complete opposite in my room. So when I got rid of that, and when I really just started to treat kids authentically and just call it their space, not my classroom, it's our classroom, and when I really just got rid of the desks, allowed for collaboration, minimalized the wall space and all of that, the kids really started to collaborate in ways that I never imagined possible, and our classroom truly became the learning environment that it needed to be. So the message for today is not about spending $1 million to redesign your classroom. It's really just becoming a more student-focused environment. I did change it. I change it every single year. This is my classroom this year. The kids wanted blue. They didn't like the burnt orange and those colors. So I said, okay, so I changed it just to blue. This is our reading area. The table is from IKEA. This table right here is $9.99. The table that you see by the tan chair was $4, all from IKEA. So everything that I do is just very affordable, but it allows the kids, you can see not a single child is actually at their seat. They all choose just to work around the room. I tried to not really put anything on the walls that much. I try and bring everything down at their eye level as much as possible. And really, we keep the lights off in the classroom too. That's the last tip that I wanted to mention today, along with just keeping a minimalistic space and getting rid of the desks and allowing just open floor space for the kids, is just keeping the lights off so that they're not hurt by the fluorescence. We bring in a lot of natural light, incandescent lighting with lamps around the classroom, and really just involving the kids. So I'll leave you with this closing thought of just some practical tips that you can do about just embracing change and really just thinking about your space and asking the kids what it is that they want in their environment, because it's their classroom, it's your classroom together as a learning environment. So I'm happy to connect with you after the session and give you some more ideas if you have any, or how to get resources, budgets, grants, any of that. So, but thank you so much for coming today, and I hope that you guys have a fantastic conference.